Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something that, well, it feels like a real puzzle in our financial lives. We usually think getting ahead financially is all about being smart, right? Good with numbers, maybe having a fancy degree. You'd expect the people with the best training, the highest IQs, they'd be the wealthiest.
Yeah, that's the common assumption. But what if that's not quite right? The sources we're looking at today really push back on that. They argue that how you behave with money is actually much, much more important than how much you know about it. It's less hard science, more, well, a soft skill. Psychology, really. So our mission today is to unpack that. How can a janitor end up a multimillionaire while some certified genius goes broke? That's the story we're going to follow. It's all about behavior versus brains.
Okay, let's dive right in with that genius who failed. The sources tell this story about a tech executive in LA, and this guy was seriously brilliant, sold companies, patented key stuff for Wi-Fi routers back in his 20s. Super smart.
Oh, absolutely. Technically gifted, no doubt about it.
Huh.
But his relationship with money, the sources call it childish stupidity. He apparently carried this huge wad of $100 bills around, always bragging. And get this, he once bought thousands of dollars in gold coins
Yeah. What for?
just to throw them into the Pacific Ocean,
Hmm.
like skipping stones. Just for fun, he said.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's not investing. That's something else entirely. It sounds like deep insecurity, honestly.
Exactly. It wasn't about smart financial moves. It was pure ego, showing off, proving he could waste money. And, well, that kind of psychological flaw, it caught up to him. He went completely broke. All that brain power, those patents, none of it mattered because he couldn't control himself.
Okay, so that's one extreme. Now let's flip it. Let's talk about Ronald Reed. You mentioned him earlier. Janitor, gas station attendant, lived a pretty simple life in Vermont.
It's him.
Yeah.
Worked as a mechanic for 25 years, then cleaned floors at a J.C. Penney for another 17. Bought a small house for $12,000 when he was 38. Lived there his whole life.
Yeah.
Very unassuming.
But the punchline is pretty amazing, right?
It really is. When he died in 2014, his net worth was over $8 million. And he left most of it, about $6 million, to his local hospital and library. And crucially, this wasn't inheritance or some lottery win. He just saved whatever small amounts he could, put it into solid blue-chip stocks, and just waited for decades.
Okay, wait a second. I can hear people thinking, so what? Being less educated is better? Is that the takeaway? Should we all just, quit trying to learn about finance?
No, that's a good point to clarify. It's not saying education is bad, not at all. What Reed's story shows is that the sophisticated skills, the complex analysis the genius exec had, they don't matter if you don't have the foundational behaviors right. Reed won because of his temperament, patience, humility, discipline to save. The genius had the IQ, but terrible temperament. Reed maybe has a lower IQ, but incredible temperament. And temperament won, hands down.
Right, temperament over technical skill. And that leads perfectly into this next big psychological hurdle, this trap of feeling like you never have enough. That tech exec throwing gold coins definitely didn't feel like he had enough. Despite being wealthy, he needed to prove it constantly.
Exactly. And there's that great story the sources mentioned with Joseph Heller, the author of Catch-22. He's at a party, and some billionaire hedge fund guy is bragging about making more money in one day than Heller made from his famous book over its entire lifetime.
Ouch. What did Heller say?
His reply was perfect. He said, yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough.
Enough. That's the key word. And it's maybe the hardest thing to define for yourself in finance today. If you don't set that goalpost, you just keep chasing.
You do, and the consequences can be devastating. Think about people like Rajat Gupta or Bernie Madoff. These guys had reached the absolute peak, wealth, power, prestige, freedom, unimaginable levels. Yet they risked everything. Everything they had, everything they were, because they just wanted more. They couldn't define enough. The goalpost kept moving.
And a big driver of that moving goalpost is social comparison, right? Capitalism is great at generating wealth, but it seems equally great at generating envy. You mentioned that rookie baseball player example. Makes $500,000 a year objectively rich.
Absolutely rich. But then he looks over at his teammate, Mike Trout, who signed that, $430 million contract? Suddenly, that $500,000 doesn't feel so great. Your frame of reference completely shifts your perception of wealth.
Yeah, it's always relative. You're not measuring against some objective standard, but against the people around you. Or worse, these crazy outliers you read about. Like, how do you feel good about your savings when someone like Jeff Bezos apparently gained $24 billion in 1 year? You can't win that comparison game.
You really can't. It's a psychologically unwinnable battle. The ceiling just keeps going higher and higher.
So if comparing yourself to others is a game designed to make you miserable, how do you opt out? What's the strategy?
Well, The sources bring up this bit of wisdom, supposedly from a Vegas dealer. The only way to win in the Las Vegas casino is to exit as soon as you enter. You have to apply that to the wealth comparison game. Define what enough means for you, stop looking at what everyone else has, and basically walk away from that particular table. Don't risk what you have and need for something more that you don't.
Okay, so controlling that impulse, defining enough that self-control lets you play the long game. And that seems to be the real secret,
Yeah?
longevity. When you talk about investing legends, Warren Buffett obviously comes up first. He's clearly a great investor, but the sources argue his real superpower isn't just stock picking.
It's time. It's simply the incredible amount of time he's been doing it. He started investing, like seriously investing, when he was practically a kid. He's been compounding his wealth for, what is it, 3/4 of a century?
That's incredible. And the numbers back it up, right?
Oh yeah, the math is kind of mind-blowing. Something like $81.5 billion of his net worth. Basically, almost all of it, over 99%, came after he qualified for Social Security, after his mid-60s. He won because he stayed in the game longer than almost anyone.
And you can see that when you compare him to someone like Jim Simons from Renaissance Technologies. Simons had like way higher annual returns, didn't he? Something crazy like 66% a year compared to Buffett's 22%.
Exactly. 3 times the annual rate. Phenomenal performance. But Simons is still worth significantly less, maybe 75% less rich than Buffett.
Why? Just because he started later?
Pretty much.
Well-
Simons hit his stride later in life. Buffett's genius wasn't necessarily hitting home runs every single year, but consistently hitting singles and doubles for an incredibly long time. Survival and endurance at a good rate allows compounding to do its exponential work. Time is the fuel.
Which brings us right to this idea of the survival mindset, because you have to stay in the game for time to work. The sources tell the story of Rick Guerin. He was apparently part of that original Buffett-monger inner circle, just as smart.
Yeah, supposedly just as sharp. But the key difference, Guerin was in a hurry. He used a lot of margin borrowed money to boost his investments.
Ah, leverage. That sounds risky.
Very risky, especially when things go wrong. And they did. When the market tanked badly in 1973-74, Guerin got margin calls. He was forced to sell his Berkshire Hathaway stock at the absolute bottom of the market just to cover his debts. Wiped him out.
While Buffett and Munger, who didn't use that leverage.
Right, they had tons of cash, they rode out the storm. They could even buy more stock cheaply because others were forced sellers like Guerin. Guerin broke the cardinal rule. He risked something he had and needed, his capital, to chase something he didn't have and didn't need. Faster, higher returns. You got to survive first.
So survival means having what the sources call room for error. And often that room comes from holding cash. But here's the pushback, I imagine. Isn't holding cash, especially now with inflation, kind of dumb? It earns basically nothing. Aren't you losing ground?
That's the purely rational view, sure. Cash often has a negative real return. But the sources argue cash provides an unquantifiable, incredibly valuable return. Flexibility and endurance. Think about Bill Gates back when Microsoft was starting out. His rule was always to have enough cash in the bank to cover a full year of payroll, even if no money came in.
A full year? Wow.
Yeah, that cash wasn't earning interest, but it was buying him peace of mind. It was, as the source puts it, the oxygen of independence. It meant he'd never be forced to sell assets or make desperate decisions during a downturn. Cash buys you staying power, and staying power lets compounding work.
Okay, so this ties into another key idea. Aiming to be reasonable rather than perfectly rational. Trying to be coldly rational all the time sounds good in theory, but it seems like it sets you up to fail because, well, we're human. We have emotions.
Precisely. The goal shouldn't be to find the absolute mathematically perfect strategy if you know you won't be able to stick with it when things get scary. The best plan is the one you can actually follow through on, even if it's technically imperfect. That's being reasonable.
And the perfect example of this is Harry Markowitz, the guy who literally won a Nobel Prize for developing optimal portfolio theory.
That's the one. He created these incredibly complex models for the perfect risk-return balance. So how did he invest his own money? Did he use his super complex models?
Let me guess.
No. He just split it 50-50. Half in stocks, half in bonds. Simple as that.
Why would he do that? It contradicts his own prize-winning work.
His reason was purely emotional. He said he did it to minimize my future regret. He knew that if stocks soared, he'd regret not having more in stocks. If stocks crashed, he'd regret not having more in bonds. The 50-50 split was his way to sleep at night. It was reasonable for him, even if not technically rational by his own models.
That says so much. And on the flip side, you have these purely rational ideas that are just
Mm.
impossible for real people, like that Yale study arguing young people should use leverage, borrow money like 2 to 1 to invest in stocks.
Yeah, mathematically, on paper, it might lead to the highest expected outcome over decades, higher average returns. But it's completely, as the sources say, absurdly unreasonable in practice.
Because nobody could handle the volatility, right?
Exactly. With 2-to-1 leverage, a 50% market drop, which happens, wipes out 100% of your own money. You're broke. Who could emotionally withstand seeing their life savings vanish and just calmly say, okay, time to borrow more and stick to the rational plan? Nobody. You'd panic, sell everything at the worst time, and destroy your financial future.
So the reasonable person, the one using a maybe suboptimal strategy they can actually stick with for 50 years.
It has a massive advantage over the rational genius who blows up after the first big storm. Endurance and commitment, driven by a reasonable approach, give you the edge over the long haul. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, the big message seems clear. Financial success isn't just about spreadsheets and calculations. It's much more about these soft skills. Humility, about luck and risks, keeping your ego in check, defining what enough means for you so you don't get caught in endless comparison.
And valuing that long-term endurance over trying to get rich quick. It's about staying in the game. And ultimately, what does staying in the game buy you? The sources argue the highest dividend money pays isn't more stuff, it's control over your time.
Like that Derek Sivers example,
No.
the entrepreneur.
Yeah, he says selling his company for millions didn't actually change his day-to-day happiness that much. The real freedom came much earlier. It was the $12,000 he managed to save in his 20s. That small amount allowed him to quit his job and pursue music full-time. That was the life-changing money because it gave him control over his days.
Control over your time, that freedom, that flexibility maybe to change careers, maybe just to wait for the right opportunity or not feel trapped. The sources call the return on that kind of cash flexibility incalculable.
Hmm.
So maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is what are those unquantifiable returns you might be ignoring? What's the real value of the freedom your savings are buying, beyond just the interest rate?